Hey guys, I'm learning TFT and I'm sharing my learnings with you so that you can learn and I can learn better as well. In this video, I'm going to go over set 15 positioning for every unit in set 15. We're going to talk about how each unit's abilities affect their positioning. We'll go over the new revamped roles in set 15, as well as utilize MetaTFT's team builder so that we can see statistics on round win rates by hex and try to draw conclusions about why each unit may be better or worse on certain hexes. By the end of this, we should hopefully have a better understanding of how each unit works, how each unit plays within their role, how they contribute to your team having success, and being able to position your units obviously much better and help you win fights that maybe you wouldn't have had if you weren't actively thinking about positioning. So before we dive into the actual per unit stats, I'm going to first go over the role changes in set 15 because that's going to impact how we think about positioning. So tanks, non-tanks no longer gain mana from taking damage. Tanks are now the only units that do continue to take damage, and they get less mana per attack compared to, I believe, like marksmen get 10 mana per attack. And the big one is that they're more likely to be targeted. So we'll see when we look at the stats, like if you have a melee, like let's say not that, but let's say you have like a Katarina next to a Garen and an enemy Sivir here, 1, 2, 3, 4, on a 50-50 between these two, in the past, it might hit the melee unit, but now it's guaranteed to always hit your tank, which is a pretty big deal when you're thinking about positioning your fighters, assassins, your melee units, essentially. So that's a pretty big shift for tanks. Fighters, now, who's a fighter? Like Gangplank, gains 10 mana per attack, which is the same. Gains Omnivamp based on stage, which affects how you want to itemize. You want to lean more towards damage rather than stacking more Omnivamp. And otherwise, mostly similar. Assassins gain 10 mana per attack, less likely to be targeted. I don't know, like if you're next to a tank, I don't know that makes a huge difference. But I suppose if you're positioned like an assassin next to a fighter like this, then this Sivir should always prioritize the fighter over the assassin. Marksman, no real change. Casters, 7 mana attack per attack, but generate mana regen 2 mana per second. Which, if a caster has, let's see, who's a caster? Like Janna. Let's actually take a look at the unit stats. We see that here? No. How do I go there? Okay, here. Oh, how do I remove all of the power-ups? Okay, here we go. All right, who's a caster I could just quickly look at? All right, let's just say Ahri here. If we look at Ahri's attack speed, 0.75, which would be, if we try to normalize this per second, 1 divided by 0.75 is 1.33 times 2 would be 2.6. Am I doing this math right? It's times 7. Gains 7 mana per attack. And you're doing 0.75 attacks per second. Okay, so it's 0.75 times 7. This is how much mana you get per second for the caster. Plus 2. So this comes out to 7.25 mana per second. Whereas someone that's at a, let's see, who's a marksman? So let's say 7.25 mana per second for a caster. 0.75 attack speed. And then someone who is a marksman, who's a 4-cost marksman? Okay, Ash. Ash, 0.8 attack speed. Is 8 mana per second. But a big difference here too is depending on your cast time. Casters usually have longer cast time, I believe, on average, than marksmen. It's not always the case, but I suspect it should usually be the case. And so presumably this mana regen should be able to generate mana while the unit is still casting. If you happen to know, I think someone in PBE said that this may have been bugged during PBE. I don't know if this was fixed. But I suspect the reason for this is that casters should be able to net more mana than marksmen by having this mana regen. That would be my understanding of how this works. All right, and then specialists. I'm gonna know who a specialist is. Jin. Okay, it's just Jin. And Jin has fixed attack speed and no mana. So resources in a unique way. Okay, so that's kind of a roles overview. And so we'll use that information to guide when we're thinking about positioning. So I'm going to start off with the mech so I don't forget about the mech, especially since the mech right now, from a meta standpoint, is performing really well, although the 15.1B is going to affect that. So this is Mentor Mech doing very well in the stats, especially from 15.1. Okay, it's not showing, but the mech win rate, high frequency in the middle here, and then on the outsides. I'm actually haven't really had a chance to play much yet, and so I'm learning along with you. But at higher mech, mighty mech levels, the mech gains more skills or abilities, and I suspect that that might affect where you want to position. So like if you want to wrap, basically general principles is melee fighters you want to put on the outsides to try to wrap onto an enemy carry. So if they have like a solo frontline Malphite and you position here, then actually this is relevant to the roles right now. If it was a 50-50 between these two, the mighty mech would always walk towards Malphite right now. But if you're able to, if for example they had another unit here, or let's say like this, and you kill this, it'd still be a 50-50, but, or let's say it's like, I don't know, for some reason they had a unit there, then you would have a chance to walk up, right? General principle being that if you are positioned on the outside, you have a higher chance of getting over here. Like for example, if this was a solo frontline and this team was able to kill this Malphite, and there was like another unit here, if this unit dies before this one, then the mighty mech can walk up here, right? So it seems like generally you either want to place kind of middle by default if we look at the frequency, or outside if you want your, if my guess is if you're higher like 5 or 7 and the Mighty Mech can deal more damage, then you put on outside. But if you happen to know why the stats are like this on the outside, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments as well. And just in general, I would love to use these videos as a way to almost form a discussion group where you can chat in the comments and contribute to us all learning together. All right, so with the Mighty Mech out of the way, we're gonna go through all the units. So Aatrox, his ability heals and deals physical damage to the current target. And yeah, nothing else that really contributes that much to positioning. Juggernaut, gain durability, especially above 50% health. When a Juggernaut dies, the other Juggernauts heal for 10% of their max health. And then Heavyweights just adds more HP. So the key thing with Juggernauts is your other Juggernauts heal for 10% of their max health, which means you want to put your weakest Juggernauts on the outside. And so that explains why Aatrox's win rate is lower in the middle and significantly higher on the outside, 56.9, 55.9 here. So I'm going to take notes here. Put on outside to sack or jug value. All right, so Juggernaut, you want to put on the outside. If we extend that logic while we're at it to Nefiri, it should be higher on the outside as well. Although Nefiri in her own right can be a carry. And so when you're using Nefiri as a carry, putting second from the all the way left or right makes sense, because let's say you have Aatrox, you actually want Aatrox on the outside so you get the healing. But if Nefiri's not your main carry, you're not playing a 3-star Nefiri, then outside probably makes a lot of sense. Just so that Nefiri and like Aatrox can both die, right? But if your Nefiri is your carry, then you may want to put more in the middle. So where is Nefiri? Outside, front, outside, to die first for Juggernaut value. If carried, then place inside Aatrox. So Aatrox dies first. Okay, I'll make this a little smaller. All right. Ezreal fires a blast, blinks a short distance, then gains attack speed, blah, 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 and more attack damage and an AP. So Ezreal will actually blink around. So his starting position, I suspect, doesn't matter as much. And it's actually quite interesting that this is his most positioned spot, but has the lowest win rate. Part of that likely has to do with the way these stats are calculated. Usually your primary carries are going to go in the corners because that's where they're the safest. But if you're playing, and these are all end games, or actually no, these are round-based stats. Yeah, that's very strange. If anyone can explain why Ezreal's win rate is so much lower here, I would love to hear it. Usually secondary carries are going to be more towards the middle, but it basically seems like it doesn't really matter that much where you put Ezreal. I'm not sure what his blink logic is either. Like, for example, last set, Zeri, there were situations where you would want to like start her here with a secondary carry here, and then you would want to keep your back row clear so that she kind of stays safe in the back row, and then put like even some of your backliners in the middle here so that it kept the back row safe for Zeri. I haven't played enough to like really be able to know how Ezreal's blink works, but at least according to these stats, it doesn't seem like it makes that big of a difference. Garen, Battle Academia is just like potential is basically like amp from set 14. And then Bastion, similar to set 14, gain double the armor MR for the first 10 seconds of combat. So both Juggernauts and Bastions gain value from being on the outside of your front line, especially if you have Bastion mixed with Juggernaut, then you probably want your Bastion on the outside of your Juggernaut. Because Juggernauts will still benefit your other Juggernaut. Like if you have a higher cost Juggernaut, then you have something like this. Aatrox will probably still die before you're set, whereas Garen's Bastion will wear off in the first 10 seconds. So if you have, let's say like this, 2 Bastions and 2 Juggernauts, you want your Juggernauts on the inside, put your Bastions on the outside so that they are able to maximize their armor magic resist value in the first 10 seconds of combat. You want them to take aggro first. All right, so Bastions on outside. And you see here that 53.6%, 52. This kind of reaffirms that you want the Bastions on the outside. Okay, Gnar. Gnar is a backline carry. He's also a luchador. So luchadors at 50% health, cleanse negative effects, heal, leap back into the fight, stunning enemies in a 1 hex radius. At the same time, snipers gain damage amp increased against targets farther away. So you basically always want your snipers in the corner. Whoever is your main carry sniper, you want in the corner, and then secondary carry can be next to. So that's why the corner hexes are just going to be the strongest for Gnar. Pretty standard stuff. Ballista, Soul Fighter gains more HP, AD, AP over time, and execution of critically strikes. Nothing in these traits that really affect positioning. If Callista is your main carry, putting him corner makes sense. So nothing too special there. Kale, Wraith is a little bit like Boombot, set 14. Does do some healing. Duelists gain attack speed over time. Also, this doesn't really, traits don't really affect Kale's positioning. Pretty much want to put in corner. Kale does get upgraded abilities as they get like level up. And so Kale launches waves once they get to 6 and level 9. So putting corner just makes the most sense, gets the most wave value typically. Kennen, Supreme Cell, doesn't really affect. Protectors also does not really affect positioning. Once per combat at 50% health, protectors shield themselves and their closest ally for a percent of their maximum health. So there is some argument for putting protectors on the outside of, so Bastions you want on the very outside because it expires within 10 seconds, but Juggernauts can be like kind of 2 Juggernauts next to each other, and even if they die later, like they still benefit each other. Whereas the Protector at 50% health will shield themselves and their closest ally. So Protectors you also want on the outside. I'm going to write this down more so by trait. Bastions outside of frontline, first 10 seconds, 2x armor MR. Juggernaut weaker jugs on outside for heal value, and then protectors, weaker protectors on outside for shield value. Because especially if you have, like, if this is your main tank with, let's say, you know, you have Steadfast and you have like a Warmog or something, you have resistances here, then this shield will benefit this unit more than if you let this unit die and then have this shield like your backliner or something. So protectors being on outside makes more sense, which from a stat standpoint, this 50%, 49.4 kind of makes sense. The middle ones are weaker or lower, and so similar logic. If Kennen is like kind of, you're not really itemizing, it's just a shitter unit, like just having the protector, and I think shield them of their max health. Yeah, you just get the, especially if like a bastion is benefiting from the shield, that's more valuable than having the shield go onto a backliner. The other thing with Kennen is that he stuns the two nearest enemies. So if for some reason the enemy is positioned like kind of awkwardly where, I don't know, for some reason if they're like kind of split like this and it stuns the two nearest enemies, it could actually stun a backliner. So I suspect that's why the outside here, it has a higher win percentage. But my guess is most of the time it won't make that big of a difference. So protector outside of front line. All right, Lucian. Lucian is a Mighty Mech sorcerer. Neither of those really contribute to positioning that much. Yeah. It's pretty standard carry. Let's look at the ability. Fires 4 shots to the target. For each miss, restore 10 mana. In general, like if Lucian's your main carry, itemized carry, put it in the corner. Nothing too special there. Malphite. True. Doesn't affect positioning. Protector, we said one be on the outside. But if Malphite is your main tank, and gains 20 armor for each item equipped, scales with armor. A lot of times if you play like crew reroll, you could be playing Malphite as your solo frontliner. In fact, if we look at, say, a Malphite 3, let's look at Malphite's itemization. Stoneplate and Bramble are Malphite's highest performing items, it appears, from a build standpoint. Yeah, Stoneplate's very common. And so generally, Stoneplate, you're going to put these 3. This one just in the middle being the safest. But here is also quite safe. So one of these 2. And then usually you're going to put your, carry in the same corner to protect. Whereas here, I mean, 50-50, it's going to go towards the middle. But if, for example, for some reason you have like another unit, let's just say you had another unit here, this walks up, there could be a situation where you end up like this. This kills this first, and at this point, this Sivir is closer than this Malphite, right? So that's why putting it here is a little bit safer. Whereas I think from this corner, you have a higher likelihood of getting wrapped from this side, I believe. If that side's unprotected and you have a solo frontliner here. But generally, you just want to go like somewhere in the middle here with a Stoneplate for Malphite. Nefiri, Juggernaut, we already talked about. We kind of talked about how outside makes the most sense. Rel, Bastion, want to be on the outside. Star Guardian gains a shield and deals damage in a short line and reduced damage taken. So her ability kind of like goes in a straight line. So usually what that means is, well, I guess statistically there's not much of a big difference. And yeah, like that, the damage she's dealing isn't enough to make a huge difference. If you knew that the enemy was like kind of positioned like this, then I think the spear will go in a straight line through. So being slightly on the outside of the enemy front line would maximize her damage. But for the most part, I don't think she's dealing enough damage for it to like matter that much. So yeah, generally positioning for Rel less important. Main thing to keep in mind is put her on the outside. Let's see. Rel dash in on side. Lucian standard carry corner. Same thing here. Same thing here. Same thing here. And I think we said for Ezreal was flex in backline since. Okay, and then Sivir. Sniper. Corner for snipers is usually going to be better because they get more range. The one thing with Sivir is that it's a blade 2 hexes through the current target and then it comes back kind of like a boomerang. And so the way Sivir's ability works kind of works like Ahri from, I think it was like 2 or 3 sets. Set 13 Ahri, I think. The set 12, I don't remember. But the way it works is you want to be on the same side where the enemy has more units, more frontline units. So if, for example, walks up here, the boomerang will go in a line here, right? So Sivir works really well with Malphite as a solo frontliner. And, I suspect this also affects why Malphite's positioning is better or worse in certain hexes. But it's probably because if you were to position, if you're doing true reroll, Malphite and Sivir work well together, and you would want Sivir to be aligned on certain hexes, which indicates to me these 3 are the strongest. And so then Malphite being here and letting this, it depends where your enemy is, right? But getting in a line makes a difference. So you kind of have to balance hitting more units as opposed to the sniper value on Sivir. Sniper wants corner. The ability wants to solo frontline plus get opposing frontline lined up for the boomerang. All right, Syndra. So Crystal Gambit is the loot trait of this set. Nothing that should really affect positioning. Star Guardian should not affect positioning either. She does gain 5 ability power every 3 seconds and then gains mana gen. So nothing that drastically affects positioning, but if she is your main carry, you usually just want to put her in the corner. The reason I suspect that her corner win rates are lower is because usually you don't want her to be your primary carry, and so you'd rather her be somewhere in the middle so that your main carry is safer. And so, yeah, if you are going to carry her, put her in the corners. If you aren't, put her in the middle. All right. Zach. Deal magic damage to enemies within a 1 hex radius. Nothing too special here. Generally kind of, yeah, nothing too special about Zach. Pretty standard. Mundo. Mundo is a luchador and a juggernaut. Juggernauts we talked about before. If they die first, helps the other juggernauts out. So that's why higher 54, 54 here. And then Seems like this 1.5% is Mundo's hero augment. Forget what that was called. Oh, becomes a ranged marksman. He now throws chairs that deal heavy damage. So if you're playing hero augment, then cornering it makes sense. Otherwise, pretty standard. Gangplank. Duelist. Gangplank is a fighter. Deals physical damage to lowest health enemy within 2 hexes. If the target dies, 40% chance to gain 1 gold. So now is when like kind of the fighter tank analysis makes sense. We did talk about how bastions and juggernauts you want to be on your outside. So usually that means if your fighter is your main carry, second from the left or right can make sense. If you want to keep them more safe, if you want to wrap on your opponent, then on the outside makes the most sense. And a lot of times now, even if you have something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4 is 50%, we'll always prioritize the tank. On this side, though, 1, 2, 3, yeah, so same thing. So your fighters on the outside are reasonably safe as long as you have a tank next to them, right? So just make sure if you are going to put your fighter on the outside, have a tank next to them so that the tank always takes aggro first. And so then, yeah, outside makes the most sense. Second row here actually has a higher win rate. And that way, if like you have an actual strong tank, they have a chance to walk up. This is like kind of even safer. If for some reason, like they have, let's say they for some reason put their carry here, then 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, I guess it's still 50-50. But if they have a unit like, you know, a tank here, then you're kind of stuck here, and you're taking aggro without having the ability to generate mana like you used to. So this is just even safer if you really want to make sure that they're not taking aggro at the start of the fight. But for most part, I would just do front corner. To max wrap potential and put tank next to GP to draw aggro. All right, Janna. Protector, strategist. Nothing that really affects too much. If she is your main carry, corner makes sense. Otherwise, she's going to be your support unit. And her ability does split damage between the 2 closest enemies. But for the most part, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. She's your carry, corner makes sense. Otherwise, middle for support. Jin, sniper, you're probably going to want corner if he's your main carry. Otherwise, somewhere in the middle if you have a stronger sniper who is your carry. Kaisa, traits don't really matter. Same thing. Corner if main carry, somewhere in the middle if not main carry. Katarina reroll is kind of going around right now. She does blink around to the lowest health enemy within 2 hexes. And then, yeah, so for the most part, I don't think it makes that big of a difference where you started. It looks like these stats don't affect it too much. Potentially why this might be stronger, I'm just trying to think. Lowest health within 2 hex deal enemy. I assume it would prefer jumping here. But if, for example, it was like this, then it could jump here. And then if this dies, then the lowest, well, most likely it would still go here first. I'm trying to think of a scenario where it would like actually try to jump back here. But it seems like if you are starting here, there's likely a higher chance of getting to this carry than to this carry from this spot. That would account for the difference in this 2% or 1.7% diff in that win rate. But it seems like for the most part, like across the board, pretty evenly, it doesn't really make a huge difference. Kobuko, standard tank, heavyweight. Unlike the Bastions and Juggernauts, doesn't really make that big of a difference. The win rate is significantly higher on the outside, interestingly enough. Does stun. Yeah, I wonder why he's so his win rate's so much stronger on the outside. Could just be because he's a weaker unit and you might want to put him on the outside. Also wonder if there's their hero augment for Kobuko. No, I don't think so. Yeah, if you know why Kobuko's win rate is so much higher, let me know in the comments. That's a curious one. All right, Lux, Sorcerer, Soul Fighter, nothing too special. Fires an energy ball towards the largest group of enemies containing the target. Shred, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, same thing. If Lux is... I guess, though, you would want to position Lux to hit the most... like, if the enemy were positioned like this, you would want to target this Malphite because Lux's ability would hit in a 1 hex radius around. If Lux was here, it would only hit Aatrox in this middle Malphite, not this one. So that might explain why, 54, 54, 54. It's like a little bit higher win rate in the middle, possibly because of that. But if she's your main carry, I think usually you want to put on the outside anyway. But there could be some slight optimization if you know for sure who you're playing against. Rakan, Protector, and Battle Academia. Potential heal the 2 lowest percent health allies. I would suspect that because he is healing other allies, placing in the middle lets the allies take damage first, so then Rakan can heal them. Whereas if he's the primary one taking damage and there's no one else to heal, then you lose that heal value. On the other hand, protectors kind of want to shield the other ones, but you probably put your weaker protector on the outside. So I would have hypothesized that in the middle would have been better, but it seems like win rate on the outside is slightly better, but it's not by much. Yeah, it seems like it probably doesn't make too big of a difference where Rakan is. Shen, True Bastion, Edgelord. Bastion, you want to be closer to the outside. His ability doesn't do too much on positioning, so seems pretty standard across the board. Probably just outside if you have a mixed frontline. Vi is a Juggernaut, which if you put on the outside can help your other Juggernauts. It does have 20% Sunder, so you would want to position Vi on the same side in front of your main carry. Like if, for example, you were carrying a Sivir with AD, then probably try to, hit the same target. And so therefore, I would expect that Vi's win rate would be higher on the outside, which seems to align. Even like second row here to hit the same target, we have 53.8 here and 54 here. So that way Vi's guaranteed to be able to sunder, this frontliner. Instead of if you have Vi here, it might sunder this unit, and Sivir wouldn't be able to get that value because Sivir's attacking a different target. So big thing with Vi is put on side, same side as your AD carry, and keep her safe to sunder enemy if don't have sunder already. Okay, Lux, we said ability hits 1 hex radius, so middle slightly better. All right, Zaya. Star Guardian, Edgelord don't make that big of a difference. Every third attack deals more magic damage. Gain attack speed. Attacks deal damage to the target and 2 nearby enemies. Pretty standard if she's your carry outside. Usually it seems like she's not your main carry, so somewhere in the middle makes sense. Xin Zhao. Soulfire Bastion. Bastion's on the outside. We talked about for 3 seconds, take 40% reduced damage from unmarked enemies. It's damaged in a 2 hex radius. So he deals more damage to enemies in 2 hex radius, so I would expect middle to be slightly better, but it seems like his stats are pretty even across the board. Yeah, I mean, the Bastion value is better on the outside, but damage depends if you want more tankiness outside, if you want more damage inside. But I think the damage won't make that big of a difference in general. All right, 3 costs. Ari is a Star Guardian sorcerer. Her Star Guardian gives mana over time. Overkill, split between 2 closest enemies. If she's your carry, you put in corner, otherwise middle. Pretty standard. Caitlyn is unique. She is a sniper, but she fires a bullet at the farthest enemy. And so her positioning is quite unique. You want to create an open line to the enemy carry if possible, which like here is interesting because if they have like a solo frontline like this, you know, and you have this Malphite staying there, then this has an open shot at both this and this. Whereas if you put it here, this Malphite here will block Caitlyn's ability. So it really depends on how the enemy is positioned, but this kind of guarantees that if they have a solo frontline like this, that you can hit both sides. But of course, if they have, you know, a tank here and you walk up, that might change. Same thing here. Although this can hit here even if this is here. But if it started here and walked up, then that's a different story. So you have a slight advantage in the middle. But then by being in the middle, you do lose some of the sniper value. So you kind of have to value that trade-off. But usually going for taking out the enemy carry for Caitlyn typically wins you the fight. So really depends on how the enemy's positioned. You can experiment with being in the middle for Caitlyn. Darius, traits don't really affect. Increased by 60% damage against tanks and can recast if the target dies. Tech fighter, typically you want to be on the outside. Try to, once you kill the frontliner, then you're hoping that like maybe this one dies before and then you could jump straight to back. So just you're hoping that you can wrap. If you're concerned about safety, you know, over here makes Darius extra safe if you have a frontliner, you know, that's taking aggro, and then try to walk up and then dunk here. Where you kill this first, and then you can ability kill and then jump on here. So fighters, you want to be on the outside to have that opportunity to wrap. Jace, I feel like Jace is not really used as a carry right now, so his stats seems like doesn't really matter that much. But same thing, if you are carrying Jace, then outside, same logic as Darius. Kog'Maw offers you Shred and Sunder. If you are using him for Shred and Sunder, then you want Kog'Maw to be same side as your main carry. It's put next to, you know, your main carry. or even like in front like this to guarantee that's hitting same target. Sometimes if you do it like this, you know, this will hit here and then this will hit here and they're not really sundering. If Kog'Maw is your main carry, then you just want to put it in corner. Right now, the stats for Kog'Maw don't look good. Not really, seems like Kog'Maw is not really in the meta. Malzahar. Prodigy, Mana Gen, Wraith shouldn't really affect positioning. Infects the closest one uninfected target, and then keeps spreading. Malzahar, it's kind of like Morgana from last set. It will keep on hitting the next uninfected target. So corner, if you're playing Mal's reroll and Mal's is your main carry, or in the mid game Mal's is your main carry, you want to put him in the corner. If he's not the main carry, then put it in the middle. Usually you want to be same side enemy carry. So like, let's say this Gnar is their main damage dealer. You want, you know, let's say they're spread out like this. You want to infect this, then it will like kind of infect this or this, right? You want to be able to start dealing damage to their damage dealer. Whereas if the mouse is on this side, it's going to infect this Gnar the last. And you have much higher chance of winning this fight if Malzahar could just take out this Gnar as early as possible. So Malzahar wants to be same side enemy carry. Okay. Nico. Protector, we talked about how slightly outside is better if you have a protector that is higher value. But once you start getting to the higher level protectors, then putting in the inside probably makes more sense, especially if they're itemized and have more armor and MR. Gain durability, deal magic damage to enemies in 2 hex radius. So similar to Xin Zhao. If you want her to deal more damage, middle is better. If you want her to get more protector value, then outside's better. The stats don't really show that big of a difference for the most part. Rammus, let's see, does have a stun. Leap to the largest group within 2 hexes and taunt enemies. Okay. Seems like a lot of times if you are playing Rammus, you're playing for a Rammus 3, and if you're doing that, you're probably running Stoneplate on Rammus, which would explain why the middle is so common. So let's take a look at Rammus itemization. Yeah, Stoneplate's very common. Let's look at builds. Not enough sample size. Let's... Okay, yeah, Stoneplate very common on Rammus. So that usually means you're going to put Rammus in the middle. And you'll notice that these are quite similar to the Malphite stats. And this kind of reaffirms why this one is good, is very likely because of Sivir and her boomerang ability. Whereas Rammus, you're usually just going to put straight in the middle. So Rammus, typically play for Rammus 3, solo frontline with Stoneplate, so position in center typically. Senna, Executioner, Mighty Mech, deal physical damage in a line through the current target. So this corner looks like the highest, and then here is not bad too. So I think this is somewhat similar to Sivir. If Senna is your main carry, which I think right now it's not, like Senna doesn't seem strong enough, then, you know, secondary carry just, or even just unitemized, you just put in the middle. If Senna becomes meta, then there may be situations where it can make sense to line up your opponents, especially if you have a solo frontline Stoneplate. So putting center could make sense if you were like, you know, let's say the enemy's like this, they line up, and then you shoot through a line like this. So Senna, if carry want to line up opponent. And we said for Malzahar, same side enemy carry. This is assuming your front line is stronger than theirs. Otherwise, they just get to your Malzahar first. Swain. Bastion, you want to be on the outside. Swain's ability deals magic damage in a 2-hex radius, similar to Shinzao and Nico, which usually means center is going to be better. Yeah, 46.5, much lower win rate here, less frequency. Standard is just going to be in middle because your enemy clumps and Swain's able to deal damage to all 4 of these units. Like if, for example, you have something like this. Whereas if your Swain's over here, then Swain's losing out on damage on these 2 units over here. And so, yeah, that explains why Swain's frequency is the highest in the middle here. Udyr. Mentor bonus is 80 AP. Juggernaut. If Udyr is your weakest Juggernaut, outside makes sense. Otherwise, inside, so that Udyr can benefit from, your Aatrox dying first. Gives Udyr 10%, heals 10% max health. And yeah, I mean, outside still seems the highest win rate for that Juggernaut reason. Otherwise, inside, if you're going vertical Juggernaut. Viego. Duelist Soul Fighter. Can briefly stun. Next 3 attacks unleash a combo. Nothing too much about positioning. If Viego's your main carry, then outside makes sense. If you're concerned about safety, you can move Viego's second row. 55.2% highest win rate here. And yeah, typically outside if you want to try to wrap. I think the blink power up got removed, so that would also probably affect positioning as well. Oh, also the unstoppable power up probably affects some of the tank. It could affect why some of these are 54. I've seen dish soap position like here so that the initial charge and stun will hit more units. So I suspect that's why, like for some of the tanks, if they have the unstoppable fruit, the win rate in the second row is stronger. Yasuo. Mentor bonus is attack speed, does not affect positioning. Deal damage to the 3 closest enemies. That would indicate to me outside is going to be much better to have a chance to hit the enemy carries in the corner. And the win rate on the outside definitely confirms that. So outside's going to be much stronger, even second row here, much better than putting Yasuo in the middle. So let's see, Yasuo outside to have higher chance for ability to hit enemy carry. Put same side enemy carry. Middle to maximize damage. Outside to max from Bastion. Okay, Ziggs. Crew does not affect positioning. Strategist, you're going to put in the back anyway. Axe bouncing. 1 hex radius center around target. So similar to Lux, center should probably be a little bit better for maximizing the 1 hex ability, and the win rate kind of confirms that. So middle hexes to maximize 1 hex radius. Caitlyn, center can have higher chance of sniping and carry. Okay, forecasts. Akali. Akali is like Zed from set 14. So here and here maximizes the odds because the way her ability works goes 4 hexes away. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or from here 1, 2, 3, 4. See that those two are going to be much higher. Well, I mean, center doesn't really reach corner. So basically, you want to be same side enemy carry 3 hexes from the left or right. Set 14Z, 3 hexes from left or right, same side enemy carry. All right, Ashe. Where's Ashe? Pretty standard carry, which just means corner if she's your main carry, and you see the win rates are much higher now. For units that's very clear that they're the main carry, the win rates are much more clearly defined, whereas units that could be either, you know, support or carry, their distribution of stats are going to be more mixed. So Jarvan is interesting because he has an AoE stun. He's like this set's Sejuani, but he actually will leap to the largest group of enemies first. The most common is actually here, interestingly enough. I wonder why that is. But yeah, middle 3 seems to be the most common. You want to probably try to be same side the enemy carry. So if this is the enemy carry, then you're, you know, if they're like this, then you can jump here and stun all of this. Whereas if you're over here, you can only jump like over here. So you want to be same side enemy carry, or just middle to just forget about it. Or if sweating, positioning, same side enemy carry. So depends on how enemy units are clumping. Yeah. All right. We have Jinx, pretty standard. Carry is a sniper, so corner is generally going to be better for her. Yeah, standard. Cassante is interesting. Is a protector, so in this case, he's a higher value protector. So you want Cassante on the inside. Let another protector hit 50% health first, so that they can heal Cassante, especially if he has more resistances with items. But the key thing about Cassante is his all-out ability. On first death, he'll heal to full, gain 50% armor magic resist, and then stun. So when we think about that, how does it affect his positioning? Taking aggro first can be good. Like if the enemy's out here, so that he can go into his all-out mode. But typically it seems like you just put him in the middle, treat him like a standard tank. You probably want him on your outside, is my assumption. So like in this case, if the enemy carries here, you know, you keep him on the outside of your tanks, so that I think usually you want him to take aggro first, so that when he's dies, this Gnar, I assume, should switch targeting towards this Malphite, and then that leaves more time for him to go all out and deal more damage without taking aggro immediately. Whereas if, you know, these two die first and he goes all out, he's taking aggro while he's all out and doesn't get as much value from the all out state. Although I could be wrong about that. If I messed up that understanding, let me know in the comments. Okay, Karma just got buffed, I think, in 15.1b. Damage in a 1 hex radius center around target, so similar to some of the other units that we've looked at should be slightly better in the middle for that reason. But if she's your main carry, outside keeps her safer. So you're kind of balancing between more damage versus safety. Middle, back, more damage, 1 hex radius. Corner, safer. And these stats right now are probably also skewed because Karma in 15.1 is just not a very good primary carry. And so it'll be interesting to see how these stats change. But if you know who you're playing against, then you can position specifically. Like if they're positioned like this is going to maximize damage, whereas you position here, you're only hitting these two with Karma's ability. Leona as a tank. Bastion gets value to being on the outside. Deals damage to enemies in a 2x radius, similar to like Swain and Nico. Fire sunbursts through enemies within 3 hexes. Stealing armor magic resist. So because of that stealing ability, yeah, center's typically going to be the best because maximizes the area in which she can steal armor from. So 1, 2, 3, she'll be able to steal armor from here. Whereas if she's over here and she casts, she won't be able to gain armor MR from a unit that's here if, for some reason you have something like this. So here center just maximizes her steal armor MR ability value. So you kind of balance that with Bastion. So this is the most frequent, but right here's, yeah, like it seems like outside, you kind of balance between outside, inside. But you don't want too far outside for your main tank either, because then the enemy can wrap on your carry in the backline. So it seems like kind of like something like this balances. This has the highest 55.2. Something like this balances getting the Bastion value on the outside. Still lets you, get value on if the enemy's like this. Gets you stealing the abilities and then also maximizes the Bastion value if she's taking damage early. All right, Poppy. Traits don't really affect positioning, I don't believe. Oh, actually it might. At 40% heal, 15% HP. So because she has more survivability, it's actually not that bad if she takes aggro first. Ability wise, gain a shield, deals damage in a 1 hex radius, target is stunned, other enemies are briefly stunned. So center is going to be better because she'll be able to stun more units, which explains why this center hex has the highest frequency and the highest win rate. Okay, so center of board maximizes stun ability. Rise has been very strong in 15.1. Deal damage to target over enemies in a 1 hex radius around target take more damage. And then, yeah, nothing that affects. So if Rise is your main carry, corner is pretty much where you're going to put him. Pretty standard. Samira, Edgelord, Omnivamp AD. Right, I believe, yeah, inner arsenal. So Samira F will leap into the nearest group of enemies at 4 stacks, dealing damage to all enemies in a 2 hex radius. So initially starts out in the corner, but will leap in. And because it's in a 2 hex radius, unclear whether you want to be same side the enemy carry. Depends how strong your front line is, I suspect. If your front line is stronger, then maybe same side's okay, so you have a shot at hitting the enemy carry. Otherwise, you maybe want opposite side, but pretty much corner is where you're gonna put Samira. Set. Juggernaut. You want to put the weaker Juggernaut on the outside, so that means Set's gonna be on the inside. Deals physical damage in a cone. So if you want to maximize damage, putting slightly to the side of their front line, like hits in a cone, I think it might be able to hit all three. Whereas if you're, in the middle, you're kind of hitting two. Right? If you're fighting this way, you might actually only hit one. But it seems like it might not make that big of a difference across the board. Pretty standard. Volibear. Luchador will heal, leap back. Then every fourth attack deals damage in a 1 hex radius around the target. Nothing too special. Like standard fighter you want on the outside. Second row keeps volley a little bit safer. If he's not your main carry, then pretty much anywhere's fine. Yumi. If Yumi is your main carry, you're pretty much going to put on the outside or your standard corner. Yeah, just standard corner. Stats pretty high signal corner. All right, 5 costs. Bastion on the outside. Braum does do stun the target, spin them around. Enemies in a 2 hex radius. Okay. Because he does the spinning around, seems like middle would be slightly better. But seems like for the most part doesn't make that big of a difference across the board. Let's see, were there any other standouts here that I didn't take notes on? Not really. Okay, Gwen. Wait, where's Echo? Oh, from Isekai. Huh. Echo? Echo a range? I don't even know. Okay, it's a fighter, so it's a melee. Freeze all units while attacking the nearest 4 enemies 7 total times. Seems like the stats don't really care that much where Echo is. Okay. When attacks deal magic damage in a cone, so you want to be on the outside of the front line. And spreads out needles. Main thing is she hits in a cone, and she's a fighter. And I believe she's 2 range, so for the most part you put second row. Seems like she's very common here. Because she hits in a cone, you kind of want, I mean, this kind of keeps her safe and also lets her hit in a cone. But over here outside makes sense for standard fighter value as well. So I think if the enemy have a lot of frontline and they're clumped, center here can make sense. If you're trying to get to the back line and maybe try to snipe the enemy carry, then same side on the outside can make sense. But you're gonna do second row because she's 2 range, I believe. All right, Lee Sin. Likely depends on what stance you choose. Stats look pretty similar across the board. Nothing too special. Seraphine, Star Guardian, no impact on. Fire a friendship bomb towards the largest group of enemies within 5 hexes. wonder if there's rare situations where you would like go here. Especially if they're clumped, then you might be able to hit the enemy backline. But standard should just be in corner. Yeah, this is being the most common. I guess middle here lets you maximize the odds that you hit the largest clump. Like if for some reason they're like super clump like this, and you're here, you can't really clump hit that far. Whereas here, I believe can bomb over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas from here you can't, right? So yeah, center middle maximizes. Back center maximizes damage. Corner keeps her safer. Because she can bomb 5x largest group. So back center is going to maximize damage. TF. Crew doesn't affect anything. Bounce between 3 enemies. 4 closest. Active deals damage to the 4 closest enemies. So you want to be same side enemy carry for the chance of hitting them. And then corner. Usually, interesting, the middle actually looks decent, but the frequency is going to be higher on the outsides. I suspect that middle is just like you have a 1-star TF that's not your primary carry. So same side enemy carry to try to hit them with the 4 closest enemy. Varus. Sniper, you want to maximize distance, so corners usually make sense. These are piercing arrows. So it's similar to Twitch from, what, set 12? But I suspect corner's going to be the best, yeah. Because especially if they're piercing, you get way more. I think the angles are better, and you get more distance. Especially if you can go all the way to the enemy here, the damage amp is just huge. Yone. Send an echo towards the 2 furthest enemies, stunning enemies hit. So you want to be opposite side enemy carry. So outside. Oh, interesting that here is really strong. I mean, here we'll hit here, and then over here we'll hit here. So basically standard fighter positioning, but you want to be opposite side enemy carry. Try to stun them with ability. And then last but not least, Zyra. Rose Mother places plants in the front 2 rows. At least, okay. Summon 4 Thorn Spitters. Okay, yeah. I mean, usually she's going to be support. Support can go in the middle, primary carry in the corners. All right, that should cover all of the units. I'm going to kind of review the biggest standout units. Let's see. Malphite, usually solo frontline. Sivir has the like interesting boomerang effect, so that's something to keep in mind. Vi, same side as your AD carry to maximize Sunder value. Caitlyn has unique positioning around sniping the furthest unit away. Rammus is usually going to be a solo frontline. Malzahar, same side enemy carry to infect the next uninfected unit. Okay. Akali is like set 14Z, very specific positioning. Jarvan, you want to try to hit the enemy highest clump, same side enemy. Positioning against Jarvan is very important. You do not want to clump up. Okay. And then Seraphine, back center, maximizes her damage. TF, same side enemy carry. Yone, opposite side enemy carry. So I've bolded all of the kind of really important positioning units to remember. All right, and I will include a link to this notes page in the description below. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, questions, insights that I missed, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.